All right, so this started because of the DJ priest, who was DJing at World Youth Day, and I like, to me, I heard the music and I'm like, that like was very reminiscent of how I grew up, going to raves, things like that, and I'm like, this is just, I wasn't crazy about it. And then somebody sent me video clips from the priest's YouTube channel where it was like he was at a Halloween party, there were witches there, and it was very, to me, it looked like demonic occult imagery. And I put up a tweet saying, after Pachamama, are we surprised that any Catholics, that the Catholics will defend literal devil worship? And you responded and defended the priest. And I mean, in fairness, my tweet was clearly hyperbolic, right? And it was meant to get a reaction. And when you reacted to it, my reaction to you was, sometimes it feels like you guys will defend anything.
No, I understand that, and I think that there are clear instances of priests crossing the line on social media where I would say, no, you can't ride a hoverboard down mass. No, you can't pretend you're a DJ on the altar. No, you can't, no, you can't change the words of the baptismal formula. So I'll be pretty clear. A lot of things I'll see. There are cases where when you see it, there's clear markers here. This is incorrect or this is inappropriate. But like I said, for me, I want to give people a lot of latitude. Like, for example, that particular video where the red lights and the people wearing the devil horns, it's not a Halloween party. In Montogray, Portugal, they have a festival, every Friday the 13th. There is a festival where people dress up as devils and demons, and then you party to make fun of them, and a priest does an exorcism at the end of the night to banish them. So if you look at the original video on the priest's webpage, it says in Portuguese, Sex Day 13, Friday the 13th. So that's what it is. So I think it's important to know, like, now if people still say, hey, this is weird, it can be misinterpreted, I understand that, but I think it's important to get all the facts out.
Okay, so if you have a proper understanding of Halloween, that is what we do on Halloween, right? We mock death and we do things like, so I have no problem with that. Where it comes in is like, okay, so if it's problematic, and Rob, if you want to jump in, I know I always hog the conversation, but just jump in at any point. But if it's problematic for a Catholic which I really think evolution is absurd. Like, I think if you really understand what they say by, I'm not talking young earth creationism or anything, but I think evolution is one of those things where it's a creation myth, where it's to believe that something can come from nothing, that the selection of survival of the fittest, where how can a gene get selected that doesn't exist? I understand there's adaptation within a species, but like the whole cross species jump. And if you go and you watch I think it was Stephen Miller was on Joe Rogan, he kind of argued against the mutation theories and I guess it's macro evolution, right? Like I kind of think, so if that is something that's going to scandalize an atheist and things like that, I mean, we get accused by Protestants all the time of being pagans and worshiping statues. Now, if a Protestant sees something like that priest DJing at an event like that, why is it scandalous for a Catholic to defend evolution, but it's okay to defend that? It would be my position on that.
You're comparing a Catholic affirming the theory of evolution versus defending
no. I'm saying a Catholic denying evolution to the right? Like, so for an atheist or I guess an atheist seeing a Catholic denying evolution, he would kind of laugh him up and be like, these people don't even believe in science. Where a Protestant who sees they're already accusing us of statue worship and things like that, to see a priest DJing at an event like that, like, wouldn't that scandalize them too? Like, do you not see a comparison there? Or am I comparing apples to oranges?
I think it depends. I mean, there's some Protestants, that's the typical kind of worship service that they do. If you're like an evangelical, for example, so that might not be something that necessarily scandalizes them.
With house music.
Well, I remember once I went to a Protestant church in San Diego. It was an old, so this was, I was part of this pro-life group. So we were visiting them because we were doing a pro-life training with them, and they bought out an old U-Haul storage facility. And what they did, so you know how U-Haul storage facilities have like little islands, storage islands. So each one they turned into a church. It was one church, but like 6 different mini buildings you could go to. So there was the traditional building, the house music DJ building, the Starbucks building. It was literally pick whatever you want. So I think though that even if that were correct though, that yeah, you're wrong about defending this particular priest involved in DJing or something like that. That wouldn't have any bearing on whether what scandals are related to a prominent Catholic saying they don't believe in the theory of evolution or something like that. I mean, they are two separate issues. You could be wrong about the DJ priest, but still be right about saying you don't want to necessarily hold a public view that is so off-putting to non-religious people.
Well, let's not say evolution, because I think that one's debatable enough. Let's go moon landing, right? Because that's well, let's go with it, because even Dr. Kwasniewski said the same thing, right? Dr. Kwasniewski, who's a very traditional person. So this isn't Novus Ordo versus traditional. You have a person like Dr. Kwasniewski on his Facebook said it's pretty absurd to see prominent Catholic voices out there doubting the moon landing, and I know you hold that same position, right?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty well established fact of history. There's good evidence for it, but I think that ultimately, like where you and I would be talking about this, I guess my question would be: is there a position on a matter beyond faith and morals that would be so embarrassing for a Catholic to hold, a prominent, and we're talking about prominent. There's a difference between Joe down the street and he believes whatever, it doesn't really matter, versus someone like Taylor Marshall, who has 500,000 subscribers. And when you reach a level of prominence, you have a bit of a responsibility with the message you put out there, because people rightly or wrongly look to you as like a face of Catholicism. And so, you've got a responsibility there. I think the goal in our thinking should be, okay, well, what kind of position would be so embarrassing you would tell them, hey, it's fine if you believe it, but I wouldn't broadcast that to people. Yeah. That's not a good idea. And then wherever we settle on the answer, that will kind of inform us of the other examples down the line. So, like, for example, like the counter I would give would be like, let's say Taylor, and obviously I'm not saying Marshall believes this, but let's say Taylor Marshall believed that the earth was flat. He was a flat earther. Yeah. I think most people would say, you should probably just keep that to yourself.
Yeah.
So then it's like, where do you draw the line between flat earth, moon landing, evolution? That's where it's like, we can see some things are like, yeah, definitely keep that to yourself. Other things are going to be more gray areas, but it's going to be hard to draw the line.
The moon landing thing is funny because I always say it tongue in cheek. Like, I'm goofing around. I'm just like, it's like after the past,
you're doing it to get a rise out of people.
Yeah, I just think it's funny. It's like,
but I think the other problem is that, and it's fine if someone's just kind of making a joke about things. I think the problem though is that, especially on an issue like that there is like a prevailing cultural attitude that Catholics are anti-science, like the Galileo myth, like. So the problem is, like, when you say something, you always have to, and especially when you're representing the church and you have a prominent platform, it's like, okay, it's not just what I mean. And it stinks when you have a prominent platform, you have to just do this stuff. How will it be perceived by others? And so you always have to run things through. And some people don't. They don't care at all. Whatever. Forget them, if whatever they feel. But I think prudent people are going to run it through that filter of not just what it means, but what will people take from it.
So, all right, I'm going to say this then, because like it was, stop with the like, Anthony. You and Chris Stefanik, right? You guys both kind of were backing me up in my harsh statement. And I'm like, okay, but the Franciscan guys and the Catholic Answers guys, like, you have no idea how powerful your voice is. Like, you guys, when you say something, you guys set the tone for like moderate Catholics, I would say. Right. Like, I'm not kidding. When you say something, like, it really does hold a lot of weight. So if you come out and say something like, hey, maybe this priest should take this video offline, like, it's not, whether it's properly ordered or not, it might not be a good look to, and just hold him to the same standard that you're holding, because
I agree. And for me, like, and I have a book coming out on liberal Catholicism. Now, he's not a priest, but like, I very clearly, like, I critique, and I do critique priests, and their Father Martin's one of them, and there's Father Haran and others. But I remember that guy, I think his name was Rob McCann. He was the Catholic Charities guy in Washington who did that video, and he's saying, like, I'm racist, and the church. Do you remember that? He's like, I'm racist. Yeah,
I was so offended by that.
I was like, resign. Then if you think the church is racist, leave. Like, this is absolutely scandalous for you to do. You should not, you shouldn't do that. My point with the DJ priest, though, I get a little bit more sensitive It's more about the issue of calumny and accusing someone of grave things. Because, like, for me, I would be fine if someone shows him DJing. And even I, like, my honest reaction to that is like, it's not entirely my scene. I mean, I guess honestly, the thing with the DJ priest, the one that I found the least objectionable was the thing at World Youth Day.
Yeah, me too. It was just house music. That was it.
And here's the thing, like, that was done at 6 a.m. Like, I did Cologne in 05 and Sydney in 08. I was a chaperone for World Youth Day. And, like, you go and you spend the night in a field, and then you wake up the next morning, and usually how they wake you up is there's people that go around with bagpipes, and it's so annoying. There's people that walk around with their bagpipes to wake everybody up. There's always it feels like at every Catholic pilgrimage or something, somebody brings a bagpipe for that reason, without fail. And so it's just like, we're going to do this house music to wake people up at 6 a.m. and then we're going to do mass. But the other stuff, like the nighttime thing, it was that one nighttime one, not the Halloween one, where I'm like, it's the Ave in it. I'm like, I'm not a fan. So if someone wants to say like cringy, bad, even if they want to say this is kind of scandalous, okay. It's the accusation. Like, you might have meant it more tongue in cheek, but like Taylor Marshall, like, put on his thing satanic. Kennedy Hall did like a whole video trying to break it down. I'm like, whoa, we gotta. I think there's a problem sometimes on Catholic Twitter where, like, you see something bad, and there's this idea that, like, if you have a moderate denunciation, it's like you're two-faced. So if you're really like an honest, authentic person, you'll just condemn it as harshly as possible. But I hesitate to do that unless I have the evidence to back it up.
I'll tell you. All right. So I'm in the middle of these conversations because, first off, I started that one, right? Like, I was so obnoxious about it. That was on me. But also, like, I see both sides, and I see the trads going too far, and then I get annoyed when the more moderate people don't say enough, and it's a lot of it from the trad side. I would say is, we feel like our Catholic identity is being ripped away at every turn, and the church just constantly concedes to the world and is constantly trying to make the world think, especially World Youth Day. Now, I also don't want you to think like I'm 100% against World Youth Day, because I have a cousin that went, and I want to interview him because he told me he had an amazing experience there.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, we catch these little clips online, right? You get the clip of the DJ priest, you get the clip of the Tupperware Eucharist, and you get these clips, and that's all we see from America, and we're seeing the highlights of the worst from America. Now, people's actual experience there could be totally different. I don't want to be the guy who just puts myself, I hate this, I don't, whatever.
Yeah.
But we're so tired of dumbing down the faith.
Yeah.
Right. And even Bishop Barron says this. He's like, people are like it's so milquetoast at this point that I want to.
Well, I saw somebody on Twitter complaining about the assumption of Mary being a holy day of obligation because it's on a Tuesday. And I'm like,
I saw that one too.
And I'm is
it an obligation if you go to the Byzantine church?
I don't know, because they celebrate the feast of the Dormition. So I don't know. The Eastern calendar is different. It overlaps a lot, but it doesn't. Now, I'm not canonically Eastern. Our children did receive the sacraments in the Eastern Church, which I love, by the way. They're all set. They're all done. Okay. But we're not canonically Eastern. You can petition your bishop to do that, and that's one way. Or I think if you get married, you switch rights when you get married. Okay. But otherwise, I was just thinking, like, seriously, you can't just offer, especially when they're like our parish off. We went to the 7 p.m. mass the night before. And so it's like, if you have work, you have things there, and the church was full. So it's like, you can't offer up, like, you want it to be that lack of rigor. You just can't, like, carry your cross. I don't get it.
Yeah. Man, I think that as Catholics, it's just this constant conceding to the culture, and it's especially like with the stuff that's going on with the synod, right? It's like it's not about, we don't like a certain group of people. It's none of that. We just want the church to stay the church. And when you're seeing these gatherings come, and you're seeing the impression, because I would say this, I won't put you on the spot and ask you what you think on this, but if you asked me, has the hierarchy or Francis taught that same-sex acts are licit, I would say on paper, no. But there's different ways to teach. Like as a father, right? If I tell my children, you should treat your wife like she's the queen of your home. You should treat your wife like she is your partner in everything you do. You should uplift your wife in all things. And then I go and berate my wife and I mistreat her.
Yeah.
I taught them one thing, but I also taught them something else. And I would say that the hierarchy is teaching the world something, not through words, but through their actions. And that's what I think makes a lot of people very, very weary of what's going on right now.
Yeah, I've seen that, and it's always hard because, like, when you say hierarchy, like, you're gonna get different bishops will respond to things in different ways. So I feel like bishops, leaders beyond the hierarchy, like, I agree with you, that happens, and this in my forthcoming book, I talk about this a little bit. Like, for example, when Catholic schools wink, wink about teachers who are in same-sex marriages or partnerships, and they don't do anything about it. That there, like the school may teach that in catechism class, homosexuality is wrong, but the students clearly get the wrong idea because there's a teacher teaching there who's celebrated, who's in a so-called same-sex marriage. They can't possibly imbibe the Catholic teaching in that environment. And so what often happens in those situations is like the principal hires this person. A lot of times the principal is in a similar relationship, honestly, to be honest. And eventually the bishop finds out about it. And the bishop says, this guy's got to go, or you can't call yourself a Catholic high school. And then the bishop looks like the bad guy because this person has been teaching for years and years and years, beloved of students. And of course, then there are bishops who know about this stuff and they just kind of ignore it. And then they don't do anything. So I agree with you there. But I think what's also hard is like trying to walk that middle ground where, you know, you read in scripture about how Jesus was criticized for dining with tax collectors. He dined with prostitutes. Like, how do you put yourself in a position to make yourself open and vulnerable for someone who identifies as homosexual or transgender to come to you, to hear their concerns, to hear when they legitimately have been mistreated or legitimately have been people have, you know, not acted in a Christ-like way to them. It's a fine needle to thread that a lot of people sometimes will fall into being too soft instead of being too hard. But I do see a lot with Pope Francis trying to do that in what he's saying. I mean, even in Amoris Laetitia, it's very, very clear. It says that same-sex unions cannot be held as equivalent to marriages in any case. So, you know, it's
but I would say that's a case of him
the text
in the letter saying one thing, and then when he goes and writes a letter of endorsement to James Martin, it's like when a bishop allows pride man, like Dolan, I love Dolan. He gives us holy innocence. It's my favorite parish in the world. He says some really good things, but then he allows pride masses in his diocese, and I would say,
and that's where you're failing in your responsibility to have your actions correspond with what you say. So I fully agree with that. So it is unfortunate. There are bishops. There was one, I think, in Pennsylvania who canceled a so-called pride mass. So it's hard. There are ones that do hold, you know, will hold to that example, and then others that don't. And then, as I said, there's always going to be cases. And for me, it's just so interesting. There's endless numbers of things you could talk about in the hierarchy of, was this a good idea or a bad idea?
Yeah.
And that is why, for me, like the things that I have focused on, I just don't talk about that. Because if I did, people would want me to talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
There's so many people who do. And what's hard is sometimes I feel like I'm kind of the lone man on the battlefield trying to deal with the more sophisticated objections from, you know, I feel like Gavin Ortland is putting out arguments that are way heftier than James White ever did. You've got atheists who are responding to classical theism. And I'm like, I need to put these fires. I don't have time to be joining the complaining chorus, you know?
Yeah. So I see you as the guy bringing people into the church. I'm worried about the church once they're in, and they're like, because all right, so I'm friends with Kyle, right? And Kyle sends me texts a lot, and he'll send me, he's like, dude, I get these comments a lot, and it'll be like, Taylor Marshall almost led me to despair. And this isn't a knock at Taylor. I'm just telling you a text that these are comments that you'll get on your channel. And people will say, you know, Taylor almost like all he does is focus on this, all he does is focus on that. And I actually took a few comments off our channel, which were like, Taylor Marshall led me to tradition. Taylor Marshall brought me back to the faith. And I really think there are like this vast array of people. And it's like, I really think that you're getting a very like a lot of people that love your message, and I mean, I'm sure a ton of your fans are going to watch this show, and you get, I just see a different array of people, and what you're saying.
Well, one of the biggest things is on my channel, there's a lot of, compared to other channels, there's a lot of commenters who are not Catholic or not Christian.
Yeah. Because they come to see the
debates, and I think a lot of them, they like the particular takes I offer. Like there's like for example, when I was at Capturing Christianity, this Protestant conference, but it was focusing on atheism. And I went there and I spoke, and I actually debated an atheist at the conference because they had another Protestant guy who backed out and couldn't do it. So I ended up doing it. So it's like there's like 9 speakers, and I was like the one Catholic with 8 other Protestants. And there were a lot of Protestants that came up to me. They're like, I love your stuff on abortion. I love your stuff on atheism. I started reading Case for Catholicism. It's really got me thinking about stuff. And so, like, for me, the biggest way for me, like, for me to reach non-Catholics, and I think for a lot of people, this is a good thing to do. I want to just be the best at the stuff that they care about, whether it's how to, especially for Protestants, like how to answer atheists, how to answer pro-choice people, how to defend traditional sexual ethics, how to defend the resurrection, biblical reliability. So for them, it's like they come to me, they're like, oh, this is really good. And then they find out I'm Catholic. They read Case for Catholicism and like, oh man, it's like they trusted me with big stuff like atheism and things like that. Then it's like, okay, I really want to hear what this guy has to say about the other stuff. So that's kind of been like my approach.
Yeah, listen, me and Rob came into this, in the first few conversations we had were like, dude, there's so much negativity out there. We got to bring something positive. Like, our show is mainly comedy, and like,
we just wanted to be, wanted to remind people that you can be Catholic and have fun no matter what's going on in the church.
Yeah. And it's like, and part of the reason I'm aiming to have conversations with such a different array of people. I mean, we've had Father Isaac on the show. Father Isaac came to my house. I've had Taylor Marshall on the Taylor Marshall show. We talked to him about typology. Like, I didn't talk to him about the drama in the church. I didn't want to do that. And it's like the conversations that I'm seeing happening on Twitter specifically, they get very toxic. And
Twitter is designed. It's not designed for communication. Like it, and for me, like, I haven't paid for Twitter Blue. I'm not going to do that. So I only have the 240 character limit. Yeah. So it's like, it encourages you, because normally when we speak, we'll qualify what we say to be polite. But when you have a word count, or even if you have longer text, but you don't want to write a bunch, you're going to lose that kind of stuff. I really do wish, and I'm on there. I've been on there more recently than I've ever been. But I really think it's not a great place for Catholics. I really don't.
It's a dangerous place. But it's a weird thing, because if it wasn't for Twitter, I would have never met Rob. I would have never got you on the show. I would have never. So I'm in this.
And the biggest thing is, I love going. The biggest thing, I'll never quit Twitter, because I always I'll search for like Become Catholic or Trent Horn or stuff like that. And I'll come across you like, I'm thinking of joining RCIA. I'm not sure. And then I'll message them like, do you want my book, Case for Catholicism? And they're like, yeah. And then a year later, I get emails from these people like, I'm coming into the church now. So like, you're right. Like, I would have never met these people just off the internet. But that's why it's like, I'm going to try to dial it back more. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's a dangerous site, man. It really is, because it encourages you to say things. Oh, definitely me. Like, it encourages me to say something hyperbolic to get attention. It causes an outrage, and then I come on and people
once a
make
day,
the joke.
You text me like, should I say this? And I like, no, don't say that. 10 minutes later, I text you back. I see you said that anyways.
Dude, I don't mean any offense by this, but you two kind of remind me of me and Laura a little bit. Because Laura is
which one's which, Trent?
You're me. Melancholic, like analytic. Laura is just like the sanguine extrovert who will just say something and she'll be like, I said this on Matt Fradd. I probably really shouldn't have said this, but I'm not sorry, but I'm a little sorry.
Let me tell you something. You have no idea how much I can relate to her, because you just, like, I'm a sanguine extrovert. So it's like,
that's Laura.
People have made the joke. It's like Anthony on Twitter is vicious, and then you see me on here, and I'm like, I just think the conversations, especially face to face, like all the people that think they hate me on Twitter, like, if you ever met me in person, you would never not like me. Like, it's not, I'm not capable of being vicious to someone to their face. What are you laughing at, Rob? You saying nothing? But I really think that these conversations are important, man. It's